All right, and welcome back. Attorney Steve Vondran here. We are talking in this episode about the Kaepernick demand for arbitration. Okay, so this is a recently filed document. This is Colin Kapernick seeking an arbitration with the NFL, basically alleging collusion by the National Football League owners. Okay, so some of you may be familiar with this story. This is the complaint that was filed, so I just want to go down it and read it for you so you can give it your own thoughts and decide what you think is going to happen. But at any rate, this here says to the National Football League and all 32 teams, take notice that Colin Kapernick is filing an enforcement proceeding pursuant to the collective bargaining agreement, the CBA, Article 17, and this is what the grievance is based on. Okay, let's just highlight that. No club, its employees or agents shall enter into any agreement, express or implied, with the NFL or any other club, its employees or agents, to restrict or limit individual club decision-making as follows. 1, whether to negotiate or not to negotiate with any player. 3, whether or not to offer a player a contract to any player. Or 5, concerning the terms and conditions of employment offered to any player for inclusion or included in a player contract. So in other words, the NFL owners can't get together and collude on these items. If they do, a player's remedy is to come and seek arbitration, and that's what Colin Kapernick's counsel is doing through Geragos and Geragos law firm. Some of you may remember Mark Geragos as the attorney that represented Scott Peterson. So he's here representing, their firm is representing Colin Kapernick, and here's the story. During the 2017 NFL season and continuing to the present, the NFL by and through all NFL team owners, NFL employees, and team employees have entered into and enforced implied or express agreements specifically to deprive claimant Colin Kaepernick from employment in the NFL, as well as from practicing with or trying out for NFL teams, which Mr. Kaepernick is eminently qualified. Now, some people will point out there was a big string of losses in there. At any rate, let's go on. Respondents, NFL, and NFL team owners have colluded to deprive Mr. Kaepernick of his employment rights in retaliation for Mr. Kaepernick's leadership and advocacy for equality and social justice and his bringing awareness to peculiar institutions still undermining racial equality in the United States. Further, respondents have retaliated against Mr. Kaepernick in response to coercion and calculated coordination from the executive branch of the United States government. That's the presidency. Colin Kaepernick demands the prompt selection of a system arbitrator pursuant to Article 15 of the collective bargaining agreement, demands expedited discovery, including depositions and document production, pursuant to Article 15, and a prompt Article 17 enforcement proceeding. Please take further notice that pursuant to the CBA and the federal rules of evidence, you're required to preserve all documents, emails, texts, memoranda, notes, and other electronically stored information. This is your litigation hold letter where you have to preserve all evidence at risk of spoiling. So I'm going to skip through that. Factual background. Here are the allegations. After setting numerous athletic records at the University of Nevada, Reno, Mr. Kaepernick began his professional career in 2011 when he was selected by the San Francisco 49ers during the 2011 draft. Mr. Kaepernick quickly rose to the position of starting quarterback for the 49ers in 2012. Mr. Kaepernick ultimately led his team to the NFL Conference Championship and its first Super Bowl in nearly 2 decades. Mr. Kaepernick continued to perform as a top-tier quarterback while playing with the 49ers. During the 2016 season, following numerous instances of police brutality against minority individuals, Mr. Kaepernick opted not to stand during the national anthem in an effort to raise awareness of racial inequality and minority oppression in the United States through a silent and peaceful protest of a nation that was not living up to its ideals of freedom and equality guarantees to all citizens. In addition to his silent and peaceful expression of protest by kneeling, Mr. Kaepernick also pledged to donate $1 million of his 2016-2017 salary to support organizations helping communities in need. To date, specifically from the 2016 season through the present, there has been no NFL rule prohibiting NFL players from kneeling during the national anthem. Mr. Kaepernick has a constitutionally protected First Amendment right to engage in a silent and peaceful protest. And I did a blog on this about all the money that the stadiums, many of the stadiums receive in taxpayer funding, and my First Amendment take on that. If you want to check that out, Google Vondran First Amendment NFL. Number 7, Mr. Kaepernick's actions gained nationwide attention. Numerous other members of the NFL also began kneeling or making comparable gestures in peaceful protests during performances of the national anthem at professional sporting events. Mr. Kaepernick became a free agent on March 3rd, 2017. Based on his consistently exceptional career performance, his age, and all other objective metrics, Mr. Kaepernick was an ideal candidate and, in fact, the best qualified candidate to fill the vacant starting quarterback positions on many NFL teams, or at the very least, the numerous vacant backup positions. Goodell himself, or Goodell, I don't know how to say his name, has been quoted as stating that the NFL is about meritocracy and opportunity. However, during his free agency period, the purportedly free market, whose natural function should have resulted in a bidding war, or at least a high-level interest for a quarterback of Mr. Kaepernick's caliber, instead functioned as a peculiar institution with suspicious design and objective. NFL teams exhibited unusual behavior regarding Mr. Kaepernick's prospective employment. Multiple NFL head coaches and general managers stated that they wanted to sign Kaepernick only to mysteriously go silent with no explanation and no contract offer made to Mr. Kaepernick. Other NFL teams stated that they had no interest in Mr. Kaepernick and refused to explain why. NFL teams who ran offensive systems favorable to Mr. Kaepernick's style of play instead employed retired quarterbacks or quarterbacks who had not played in a regular season game in years, and signed them to significant contracts while prohibiting Mr. Kaepernick from even trying out or interviewing for those jobs. On September 22, 2017, during a campaign rally speech in Alabama, President Trump referred to NFL players that knelt during the national anthem as those SOBs, is all I'm going to say, implying that Mr. Kaepernick was an SOB, and demanded that NFL teams fire these players. Since then, President Trump and Vice President Mike Pence have posted tweets and engaged in various public relations stunts designed to retaliate against Mr. Kaepernick and other players that have joined in Kaepernick's peaceful protest. Following Trump's September 22, 2017 campaign rally, NFL owners and affiliates feigned concern, interesting choice of words, that they feigned concern for players by either kneeling alongside them or joining them in locking arms. That would be like the Jerry Jones. I guess that was just feigning concern, according to this. And were even featured on the cover of Sports Illustrated magazine doing the same. However, such conduct by the NFL owners proved to be a public relations stunt designed to appear empathetic to players. In reality, NFL owners threatened players with fines and suspensions if they refused to stand for the national anthem in the following weeks. On or around October 10th, 2017, NFL Commissioner Goodell announced a proposed NFL rule change requiring players to stand during the national anthem, thereby conceding there was no such prior rule in place. The owners of respondent NFL teams have been quoted describing their communications with President Trump, who's been an organizing force in the collusion among the team owners and their conduct towards Mr. Kaepernick and other NFL players. So they're sort of suggesting that Trump and the NFL owners are working hand in hand. Owners have described the Trump administration as causing paradigm shifts in their views toward NFL players. The mere suspicion of collusion against Mr. Kaepernick has risen to the level of concrete and actual collusion. It is no longer a statistical anomaly, but instead a statistical impossibility that Mr. Kaepernick has not been employed or permitted to trial for any NFL team since the initiation of his free agency period. NFL general managers and team leaders have referred to directives from NFL owners not let Mr. Kaepernick so much as practice with a team. In a league that is 70% African American with not a single African American owner, the NFL and its owners have colluded to deprive Mr. Kaepernick of employment for the purpose of making him an example to other players of the repercussions of challenging NFL power paradigm, even by peaceful protest. It is with a heavy heart that Mr. Kaepernick submits this demand for arbitration, as he has been saddened to confirm the baleful machinations that underlie the professional administration of America's pastime. So they allege here, too, violation of the collective bargaining agreement. That's the section that I read to you. And I'll let you read the rest here, but basically seeking an arbitration, and apparently I guess he's looking for reinstatement in the league or to have somebody bargain and deal with him. I'm not quite sure how that's going to play out, but that's it. There's proof of service, and you've got all the NFL teams on there listed. Everybody's been apparently served with this arbitration, and so we'll see what happens, but that's just an overview of the arbitration proceeding that was filed by Geragos and Geragos, attorney for claimant Colin Kapernick. One to watch.